Hey guys, this is C.A.T. here with a quick introduction to modeling in Blender. This is version 2.66.1 in Windows 7 environment. We're going to start with a new file. We'll reload startup file. It always gives you a camera, a cube, and a lamp. Alright, first thing I want to talk about is moving around the viewport. And this whole window I'll refer to as the viewport. So if you hold Alt and use your left mouse and drag, it'll give you this rotate around the object. If you hold Alt and hold your middle mouse down and drag, it'll give you a pan. And if you hold Alt and hold your right mouse down, it'll give you a zoom. Now you can also use the middle mouse wheel, if you have one, to zoom in and out. And one other thing that's really handy as far as finding your view goes is if you're not centered on what you want and it's not moving around the way you want it to, you can hit the period on your number pad and that'll focus right in on it. And that can also give you a different level of zoom that you may not be able to get out of your mouse. I also wanted to show you that while you start out, usually defaulted in a perspective view, which gives you this sort of three-dimensionality to what you're working on. If you hit the number pad 5, you'll get an isometric view which flattens everything out. And if you then hit the number 1 on your number pad, it'll give you an orthographic view, dead on from one side or another. And then from there you can use like 6 to rotate, 4 to rotate side to side, 8 and 2 to rotate up and down. And anytime that you then hold Alt and left mouse, you'll go right back to perspective view. Now if you want to manipulate your object and have something to work with other than a scaled or rotated cube, you're going to need to go into edit mode. And as long as your cursor is in the viewport, you can just tab between edit mode and object mode. And if for any reason you need to use a drop down menu for that, there's a drop down menu here and you can just go into edit mode. And when you're in edit mode, you have the options of working with your vertices, your edges, or your faces. And I'm going to take faces for now to show you the standard tools that you're going to be working with your 3D manipulator here. The manipulator is color coded by axis, so the green here is the Y, the red is X, and the blue is Z. And with the move tool selected, you can just move things around. Whatever's selected, you can move it around, no problem. You can get your rotate tool or your scale tool anytime by toggling through this list here, or by using key commands, W for move, E for rotate, which will give you that, and R for scale, which will give you that. One note with the scale tool: if you hold shift and grab a manipulator arm, it will exclude the axis that you're working with. So now, to further that example, I'm going to grow my selection with Ctrl+, and now I'm going to exclude that x-axis while I'm scaling. And you see it's scaling equally along Y and Z while not affecting the X. And you can then shrink your selection afterwards with a Ctrl-. Another very handy tool that you'll find you use a lot probably is loop cut and slide. Click it once to activate it, drag it over the object that you want to use it on, and then with your middle mouse wheel you can make more or less splits, and they'll always come in equally spaced. Click again, and now you will have the option to slide even if there's more than one, and click again to set it where you want. Now if you're really set on having that split the area evenly, let's back up with Ctrl-Z, Ctrl-Z again, select the tool loop cut and slide, and then double click it into place and it will stay centered. If you do that at some point and you realize you wanted to do something more with it before you lost it, you can Ctrl-Z to regain the full selection, or if you're in edge mode, you can always hold Shift, Alt, and click one of the edges to select the entire loop. Now I want to show you in face mode. If we toggle the selection, limit selection to visible, it will give us the ability to sort of see through our object. And now when I marquee select this, I get all of these faces, whereas if I had done that when this isn't active, I'll only get the faces that I can see from my current view. So just like any other Windows environment, by holding Shift and selecting more, I can add to my selection. When I hit delete, I get a confirmation that is really more of an options window. In this case, I'm going to delete all of the faces because I want to go back to object mode with Tab and show you an object modifier. This modifier is a generated modifier, and it's called mirror. And what a mirror allows you to do is to work on one side of the object in edit mode. I'll grab these edges and I can Shift Alt to grab that edge. And when I make changes to one object, to one side of the mirror, the original half of the mirror, you see that it affects the other half as well. And that's true whether I'm just working with a single vertex, or if I'm working with many all at once. So you can make a mess, but it can also be a great time saver. And one last thing that I'd like to show you, by not including the x-axis when I scale down like this, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth the entire object. And that's an object smooth that I just did. Although if I was in edit mode, I could have selected all the vertices, hit smooth again, and gotten the same result. But now in object mode, I can add an object modifier, and this is another generated modifier called the edge split. And what that does is it creates a threshold with a controller right here that allows you to determine at what angle the smooth takes hold. So with the example of a sort of stretched out cube, it doesn't show you a whole lot. It's not as visible a result, but there is a result there. And you can see, I'm sure, how that will eventually be very helpful to you when you're modeling. The last thing that I want to talk about before we get into any kind of file management is extrude. And I'm going to turn off the see-through ability here. If I select multiple faces and I then go to extrude, my choices are to extrude region or extrude individual. If I extrude a region, and you'll see that if I don't double click here, moving my mouse off of the tool automatically creates a change in the geometry. If I had double clicked there, I'd be able to come back to the viewport without making any changes, and then if I wanted a different manipulator, I'd be able to get it before any changes were made. So in extrude region, I now have all of these faces have extruded and they've remained together. The only new geometry that was created was along the edges, new face, new face, new face, and new face. But if I had, we'll back up with Control Z, if I extrude individual, what happens, and I double click there so you see I can come back to the viewport, and I'm actually going to change my orientation to normal, and this should give me a slightly more outward movement from the original position rather than the global, which is going to go on global orientation. If I now take one of these faces, having extruded them individually, you now see there's more geometry created in between the faces that were extruded, as well as on the outer perimeter of the area that was extruded. And that's true for all of them. So you've got more faces in there, no holes. Alright, So you can do a lot of different things with edge split, extrude, and just your normal tools of translate, rotate, and scale. Now finally, when you're at a stopping point, you may want to save a version or save your entire file. I usually save a file right off the bat when I'm working on a project because I want to establish the name of the file, and I want to be able to use this keyboard shortcut at any time, Control S, when I know I've done something that I want to keep, and save often. The other option you have, see, if you click save, it'll give you standard directory option. It's a little bit different than a normal Windows environment for navigating, but you can create new system bookmarks, and you can even start at a hard drive location and drill down from there. You just name your file here, which would be, let's say tutorial cube. And as long as your location is set, I'm going to OBJ Armory right now, which is where I stash a lot of my OBJs, and you just save Blender file. The other thing you can do is if you have your object and you're pretty happy with it, you want to see it somewhere else, or you have a reason to export it as a particular file format, be aware that these other things in your scene are going to go with it unless you get rid of them. But then what you can do is just go File, Export, choose your format, choose your location, and save it, and then you'll be able to bring it into another piece of software that requires that, or may require that file format. The FBX exporter and importer is not standard in 2.66.1. It is available in the user preferences, but you may need to activate it. And of course, import is pretty much just the opposite of export. You'll need to drill down to your location and find your file to bring it in. Let's just show you user preferences real quick. If this window doesn't come up when you click user preferences, it probably opened behind your project window. So in my case, I can just hover over the bar at the bottom here and it'll show me both windows, and I can select the one I want to work with. If you go to add-ons, then you can scroll down. You want to pick your field of interest, import export here. Import Autodesk FBX format should be available. Just check it, or install from file and save user settings, and you'll be able to work with FBXs for Unity. And as import is pretty much the opposite of export, so too is open Blender file. And there's a nice open recent here. The potential to recover an autosave is also here. So a lot of options for managing your files, getting them back when you need them. And that's everything that I wanted to show you guys just to get started. One more reminder, Control Z of course works to undo. I undo a lot, so I think it's important to convey that. Along with the translate, rotate, and scale, you also have a select option under the letter Q, and that'll get rid of your 3D manipulator. You can either get that back by hitting Q again, or by hitting the little icon for it down here. We'll toggle it on and off. And finally, let's touch on this again real quick. You've got different options for orientation. You can even have an orientation based on your view, and you see what that does is it basically gives you an orthographic orientation straight on from your view, and it'll stay with you as you move around. So that could be good for doing some really more organic surfaces possibly. Well, thank you guys for watching. I hope this has helped you jump right into Blender, and happy modeling.